To our regular council meeting for Monday, October the 30th. We will be starting for our closed meeting at 5:30 today. The recommendation is that the regular council meeting be held on October 30th, be called to order at 5:30 p.m. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. And may I please have a mover and a seconder to go into close? The recommendation is as presented on the agenda. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? And that carries. We will be back here at 7 p.m. to start our regular open meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our regular council meeting for Monday, October the 30th. To start, we will reconvene into open session, and the recommendation is that council reconvenes as of 7 p.m. in open session. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. We are gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. We have one addition to the agenda item, which is item 9.1, the update from our Waterloo Regional Police Services. Do I need a mover for that? No? Okay. That's just a notice. And the adoption of the agenda as amended with the addition. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Are there any conflicts of pecuniary interest to declare? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, Mayor. I would identify a conflict of interest in 12.2 with the Phase 3 of Snyder Road construction. My oldest son is CEO at Walter Fady, and so therefore I won't be involved in the discussion or voting on it.
Thank you very much. You will be able to remain in your seat at that time, but just please do not engage in the conversation or voting. Minutes of the previous meeting are from October 16th, 2023. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the minutes before we move? Okay, and all those in favor of passing them? And that carries unanimously. And on to our presentations. So we do have two presentations this evening, and just to let the presenters know that you will have 10 minutes to address council. We will first welcome up Chief Crowell from the Waterloo Regional Police Services to make your presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chief.
Thanks very much. It's an honor to be with you representing our police service, joined here tonight by several colleagues, Superintendent Sloan Lakovic from our Neighborhood Policing Division, Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who oversees our Traffic Services Unit, Staff Sergeant Jay McSween, who oversees our Rural Policing Unit, and also David Mullock from our Chief's Office, Government Relations. So very pleased to be here. We're certainly very happy to join you tonight to provide just a brief overview of our commitment to Wilmot Township. And if you move to the next slide, please. Thanks for your assistance tonight. You'll note that I've been in the role of Chief of Police for just under a year. And I've been very proud to have been joined by two very capable professionals, Deputy Chief Jen Davis and also Deputy Chief Eugene Fenton. And we represent, if you move to the next slide, about 1,200 dedicated professionals who serve all of Waterloo Region. We have just over 800 officers. About half of those officers you would see in sworn capacities, in cruisers, doing work in our communities. The other half of our officers are in plainclothes capacities, specialized units, some of our intelligence-led policing divisions. And the other third of our organization is about almost 400 civilian professionals who support all of our frontline investigative work in communications, special constable services, administrative support, and many professional capacities. And we're also supported by many volunteers in our auxiliary policing duties and across many other avenues as well. The next slide, please. So as you know, we live in one of the fastest growing communities in all of Canada, rapidly diversifying, and the urban-rural mix is part of the incredible makeup of this region. And I'm very fond of highlighting that we cover more square footage than the Toronto Police Service does in any given day. That's how vast the expanse is. It's double the square footage, square kilometer footage that we cover in this region. And so as much as we are often concentrated in our urban settings, our ability to reach and to be present in the rural settings is a true commitment. And that's part of the purpose of being here today, is to ensure you understand the scope of our operations, but also our commitment to our rural policing capacities. To the next slide, please. So we are a values-driven organization, and we certainly understand that as much as our community is growing, it's very important that not only every member of our and citizen of this region is safe, but they also feel safe. And so part of that scope entails us to be visible, to be present, to be responsive, and we understand that as every rural community grows, and especially Wilmot Township for tonight's purposes, is that we're responsive to all the needs of the citizens that you represent and that you serve alongside of us. So last year, to the next slide please, our police service had just over 339,000 calls for service. We have about 800 calls per day, and they range from priority one emergencies, high-stakes interventions, to some lower priority calls for service, criminal investigations, and also some proactive duties are comprised under this number. And if you move to the next slide, you'll see that in 2022, just over 5,000 calls for service of those were in Wilmot Township. This was almost a 2% increase over 2021. And to this point, this year, we're charting almost a 10% increase in calls for service in Wilmot in the first 10 months of this year. So we do continue to see growth in this community and also a need to respond on a proactive basis. You'll see that this slide details that we have on average 14 calls per day across Wilmot. Last year, there was just about 100 priority one calls for service. And the figure at the bottom is the average of all the calls, the 5,000 calls from last year is an average of 19 minutes in response. So that would be the average of priority one, lights and sirens type response, everything ranging to some of our other duties as well. You'll also see on the right-hand side is just an overview of the most frequent call for service types in Wilmot Township. And that gives you an idea of the multiple types of traffic-related service calls that are sort of in the top tier of what we do in our normal response. Some of these calls are proactive engagements that our officers self-initiated. And if you move to the next slide, our focus on traffic and road safety across Waterloo Region, but in this township is no different, is often our most frequently requested call for service type from the community. So we seek to use intelligence and evidence-driven practices, complaints and requests from the community to provide call response for traffic enforcement duties. And we're certainly focused on our rural township roadways because about 2/3 of our high incident collisions related to serious injuries and fatal collisions are in our rural roadways. So our enforcement activities are prioritized on what we call the fatal four offenses. So that's speeding and aggressive driving, distracted driving, and that's anything related to cell phone or other distracted use, impaired driving, and also adherence to seatbelt use. And we know that if we can continue to make headway on those offenses, we will hopefully reduce fatal and serious motor vehicle collisions everywhere across our region. And this slide just details a snapshot of, through the month of July and September, our proactive engagements in Wilmot Township resulted in 273 road safety charges across many a variety, but the majority of them are speeding-related enforcement activities. So we'll continue to listen, and through you and through all citizens can provide us avenues. We try to be very smart about how we do our traffic patrol duties and traffic enforcement, not only just the locations of interest, intersections, long stretches of road, but also times of day, because we recognize that people are flowing through this community and others to travel across the region. If you move to the next slide, just to highlight at a very high level our commitment to rural policing. Very proudly tonight, Jay McSween is here to represent many of our rural policing initiatives. We're just solidifying a rural policing strategy. And this speaks to the commitment that we want to make to you as community representatives, not only for our regular call response and for our traffic-related duties, but to know us deeper and broader than that. We want to ensure that we are connected to you, that we can celebrate for your community gatherings, to your places of common gathering and so on, to ensure that we're connected to all residents of Wilmot Township. And we're trying to increase those proactive engagements, and also the use of our rural facilities continues to evolve. So everyone in this room will know that we once proudly served in a small New Hamburg police station, which will be part of a affordable and dynamic housing project, and we're happy to support that moving forward. But we continue to look for opportunities in some of our rural facilities, community centers, fire stations, and we're mapping out our total sort of bricks and mortar commitment across the rural stations to ensure that people can find us, they can see us, and that they understand that as much as our activity is mobile, we understand that the community does want to see us on a regular basis and to have those proactive touch points. So that is an ongoing conversation that we can continue with you. If you move to our next slide, this just speaks to also the dynamic nature of how policing is changing. As much as our work will always be grassroots and on the road and on the streets and communities, almost every one of our investigations now involves some kind of digital evidence of some kind. So this takes us a little behind the scenes. Every officer who you will see in a cruiser is part of a mobile office. And not only are we combating crime and our policing response online related to exploitation, victimization, frauds, thefts, everything related to the online cyber world, we're also deploying increasing technology to reach people with the deployment of cell phones that allow us mobile access, allow us to do a lot of our work from a mobile office environment in cruisers. We're deploying body-worn cameras over a 3-year rollout. And we also have just released our deployment of automated license plate reader technology in every one of our frontline vehicles. And that allows us to combat stolen vehicles, suspended drivers, wanted persons in vehicles, and so on. So that's just a snapshot of some of our digital evolution as well. The next slide just speaks very broadly to the purpose of being here tonight, is instilling a meaningful, sustained, and regular connection with you and all members of this community. And we understand that visibility matters, that responsiveness matters, and our response time is very important to all members, but it's especially stressed in some of our rural townships. So we want to instill that sense of confidence so that members of this community will trust and know us on a regular basis. The next slide just signifies that we are celebrating our 50th year at the Waterloo Regional Police Service. As much as we're proud of 50 years of regional policing success, we're also very much focused on the present and the future, and we will continue to listen to the community that we serve to evolve. And don't fret on the presentations, just one more. And the last one is just a thank you. It's a thank you for this opportunity, and a 10-minute presentation is a quick one. But we want to ensure that this can be as regular as this council requests and requires, and we can provide any level of in-depth analysis to our activities in Wilmot Township, not only for recurring presentations, but also on a regular basis. We're in touch with many of you on this council, just on a regular weekly and monthly basis to provide statistics, to provide explanations, and also to listen to the needs of this community. So I don't know where I am with time, but I'm at your disposal for questions or comments.
You are actually at exactly 10 minutes, so I'm very impressed. That is, you must have gotten it down very well after going around to other councils, so thank you very much, Chief. Councillors, any questions or comments? We'll go to Councillor Cressman first.
Through you, Mayor. I guess the question I would have is, and reading in the presentation prior to your presentation this evening, what are the specific attributes of a rural officer? What makes that individual different than the one that operates in urban centers? So I guess that's, with that designation, as a rural resident and operating a farm, what can I expect?
So we have dedicated officers for our rural zones and the rural townships. So they become mostly familiar with the roadways, but hopefully the people over time. What we've learned as we've changed our deployment over the years, though, is the requirement to have a single leadership touch point. And so Jay McSween represents, that opportunity to provide a one single point of access to ensure that the needs of every community, and Wilmot certainly inclusive, that we're understanding the needs. There's the square kilometers, the rural farm makeup is simply different. That our density-related pressures, are certainly significant within the urban centers, but we see the same criminal activity out in the townships, and especially Wilmot and the communities you represent are growing. And we often are also seeing that there's pressures where people are moving to these communities expecting the same level of service that they might have enjoyed in some of the urban centers within our region or beyond. So we want to ensure that through our leadership and through collective leadership we hear today, that we're simply responsive, we can listen, and then we can turn that into action.
Thank you. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Chief Crowell, thank you so much for that presentation, and I have to tell you that my interaction with your staff, Mr. Mullock, I've worked with Officer Griffiths, has been outstanding. They're very responsive, have been engaged with the community whenever I've asked, so I appreciate that. We met earlier in the year when we got together through Mayor Salonen, who made the arrangements for council to meet with you, as well as we had small business owners, students, an education person there, and parents and constituents. One of the things that I had asked, you may remember when we were in that meeting, was that I asked the students about the SRO program, the Student Resource Program, and that how they felt since the Waterloo District School Board had unceremoniously canceled the program. And the students missed the program and were hoping for it to come back. I have a grandson in high school, so this concerned me. So I did a little bit of research, and I do have a question, but an extensive 2-year independent study initiated by 2 professors at Carleton University, and you may already be aware of this, I'm sure you are, to examine the benefits of the SRO program, and they chose Peel Region. The research included 100 interviews with SROs, their bosses, school administrators, students, including 1,300 grade 9 students in 5 schools. And the researchers also reviewed daily records from the SROs, which I thought was very interesting, as well as shadowed them for 10 occasions. And I want to make sure that I read this quote properly. After the 2-year study, Professor Duxbury stated, "The data from our study is unequivocal. The officers who work in Peel High Schools make a positive difference to the students, school administrators, and community." And she continues, "As an educator myself, I think students should feel safe at school without worrying about bullying, cyberbullying, or physical assault. Our data shows the program provides all of these benefits and more." And finally, Professor Bennell added, "We say this with some confidence because no matter how we looked at this issue within our study, our results were overwhelmingly positive." So my question to you is, are you aware of any conversations with the school board or any community members to bring back the SRO program, perhaps not necessarily the way it was, but in some capacity? And if not, what would be your recommendation to go down that avenue to start that process?
So thanks for all the information, and very proudly our service, I think, had one of the most effective and responsive school resource programs in the province. In fact, it was deemed a model of many sorts. And the success was borne out over many years. So cutting to the chase, I can say that we've stayed in regular engagement with the public board, the Catholic board, and the other schools, private schools, cultural schools in our region, with the hope of trying to replicate the capacity of some kind. So there's complicated reasons as to why we are where we are today. But what our team is doing right now is trying to take, an evidence sort of based approach to understanding, what has been lost in the time. We continue to be concerned by the level of violence that's reported in schools today. My spouse is a high school teacher, and it's a frequent conversation to recognize that many administrators, teachers, parents, and students do miss the connection, the ability to have proactive engagements with young people. And so what I would say very earnestly is that we're looking at what's possible. We're looking at potentially recreating a capacity that would mirror the benefits of the SRO program in a wider youth engagement strategy. So what that would look like, and we're still putting together an understanding of that, is to understand that there's what happens during school hours and on school grounds, and there's everything else that can happen off school grounds and after school hours, including weekends, holidays, summers, and so on. So we're trying to find the mix on a broader engagement strategy to meet youth in a proactive, engaging way. We're also working on the community safety well-being plan to provide, which is continuing to develop, educational opportunities with as many community partners as possible to intervene early in life so that all of us can be dealing with proactive solutions rather than the end result of things as well. And so it is a work in progress. It is probably our top priority, though, is to understand that we need to get the youth engagement capacity balance right to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the community and that we're not losing a generation who will only know us in a responsive enforcement capacity. And I have no doubt that with continued collaboration that we can find the right mix that will work for our service, but also the communities that we serve.
That's great. Thank you. It's very needed. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, thank you, Chief Crowell, for coming to be with us this evening, and I concur with Councillor Dunstall. I thank you for your involvement in our township. You had 2 public meetings a number of months ago at Morningside and at the Community Center in New Hamburg. I appreciate those things. I appreciate your presence. I noticed when in your presentation with the increase of calls from Wilmot Township of 10%, maybe it's because we're extolling your virtues that people are calling on you more. And so yes, some people do complain that you're not present in New Hamburg with the station being gone, or depot or station or whatever that proper name is. So I'm just wondering, my question has to do with traffic calming. I know you've been working on it. I realize that with your presence and the laying of charges and stopping people, you've been helping with that. There may not be a simple answer, but I just raised the question. We had a recent council meeting here where we were talking about traffic calming. In the election, many people talked about one street or a different street where they're worried about the speed that people are driving. So any comments, thoughts, any way that we can work on traffic calming with you? I just wondering if you have any further thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And certainly, for a couple decades, the issues of traffic safety are always our #1 community concern, because it hits people on a real level on their street, in their community, and certainly in some of the bustling areas. So the best, highest level but specific response for tonight is to continue to advocate and report for those areas of greatest need. So we're always accruing those areas through our own responsive collision data, but also we're using evidence-based approaches to understand the times of the day, the areas of the biggest impact, and trying to cluster our activities. And so it's not only the rural officers that are assigned to these zones that will be carrying out those proactive opportunities, and that's why we showed the data tonight, because it shows that the calls for service will come and go, but in the in-between time, our officers can find themselves in the highest need places. But also our traffic services unit will do projects and regular engagements to serve those highest need points. And there's more needs that we can get to in a given day, so we do rely on you as representatives, but also for you to continue to advocate and to encourage your residents to report to us. We do have an online portal which allows people, if they're able to submit their concerns and complaints, but we take that information in any form. Sometimes get it on the radio when I'm doing that program, but sometimes we get it just through simple phone calls and also through community representatives as well. So happy to drill in deeper than that, but that's the highest level request, is just to continue to report concerns to us, and we'll develop as many strategies as we can to be present and visible. Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, through the chair, again, thank you to you and your colleagues and the work that you guys do. It is appreciated. But to piggyback on some of the comments that we're hearing, I mean, even walking out the door today, my wife said, don't forget to mention, we want more visibility. So if I could stress anything in conversations with constituents and folks around town, it's, having a greater presence. I hear about speeding that's probably the one thing I hear about more often than any other issue. And I'm like, it's funny you bring it up, go report it. So I certainly would love to see greater enforcement and greater presence out here to help tackle that. And I'm happy to hear that you're examining how you might be able to get a footprint back in this community. And I'm sure that we'd be willing to work with you on that if it comes to it. I did have a question regarding the rural staff sergeant position. And I'm curious what kind of improvements or efficiencies that you've seen come out of it, and then how you measure sort of those KPIs moving forward, and what the overall scope of that role is meant to achieve.
So thanks for your questions and concerns. I'll just hit the speeding issue, and then I'll move to the more specific question. One thing we're also doing is working with communities across Waterloo region. So as much as we want to provide that responsive and traffic enforcement capacity, automated speed enforcement is probably a part of the solution moving forward, ensuring that there's automated capacity, and that will continue to evolve. So we're part of the Safe Roadways program with the region, and that's something that will continue to develop. So Jay McSween's role is one that we had before. So previously we had a rural sergeant dedicated to the communities. We changed some of our deployment, but we heard loud and clear that it just certainly wasn't meeting the needs. We continued with the same response of number of zone-related officers, but what we lost was the reliable single point of contact. So I would say that it's a work in progress because Staff Sergeant McSween has only been in the role for several months. And so those days are early, but we want to ensure that we're listening to the community's needs. And so with a single point of contact, it allows this role to feed out the input from you, from all residents, in terms of what are the highest needs in every community. And they're very unique. I mean, what differentiates this township from all the others is significant, and we want to get that right. It's not it's very important that we get that blend right. And as these communities continue to grow, it's more important than ever that we understand what's happening, what are the trends. We're seeing big city problems everywhere. We're seeing high-end vehicle thefts. We're seeing every type of crime, organized crime, spill out into every corner of the region. And so for us to understand, through this specific position, that will be a work in progress. So with your consent, we'll look maybe forward to coming back to report on the successes and maybe some of the suggestions for improvement. To me and to us, I think it all comes down to communication. And if people can't get their concerns heard and also them to see them play out in action, then we're not serving in the way that we need and want to. So I know through Jay's leadership we can get there, but he also represents teams of teams that can serve this community very well. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay. Seeing none, I did actually have a question for you. And I may be wrong, but I believe you guys still have another public meeting for your budget?
We do, yeah.
Could you just let those know, mainly online, in case they wanted to engage in that?
Certainly. So we've traditionally, people have been able to go to regional council to provide input on the budget. So this year we've held one public engagement session. The next one will be Monday, November 6th. This will be in the evening from 7 till 8, and we're encouraging everyone interested to register, to provide a delegation, and we look forward to listening, and that will help shape the work that we're doing. We've also been engaged through our strategic planning over the past year to listen to community concerns, and so the last one was very successful, and we can provide that in writing too as well if you wish to have it for the minutes. So November 6th from 7 till 8, and we can provide a link if necessary.
And is that going to be virtual, or is that an in-person?
It is virtual, yeah.
Okay.
And that allows hopefully best access to people. And if anyone has any concerns about accessibility, then we're happy to work with anyone. A written delegation is also possible, and accessibility, we can hope to make that possible for anyone.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted a plug for that.
I love it. That's
didn't
great.
have
Thank
all
you.
the details.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to all of you for spending your evening with us here today. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. And you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting if you want.
I'll just say we've made tremendous friends with your next presentation representatives. We've been on the roadshow together, so we look forward to seeing you again soon. So take care.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now welcome our second presentation of the evening, and that is our Associate Director and Manager of Green Infrastructure Programs, Patrick Gilbride, and Energy Programs Manager Lisa Trung of REAP Green Solutions to make your presentation. Again, you guys will have 10 minutes, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us. So good evening, Mayor Solomon, members of council and staff. My name is Lisa Trung. I'm the Senior Energy Programs Manager at REAP Green Solutions. and we're pleased to be here tonight to share with you the most recent impact report and some success stories that region residents have achieved with our support. Next slide, please. Thanks. So we believe in acting today. We will leave our children a community that is more resilient, vibrant, caring, and sustainable. Our vision is our motivation behind everything we do. It's the aspirational goals that informs us in our shorter term targets. Specifically, we've tracked over 3,000 meaningful actions that people in our communities have accomplished to move us towards a resilient, low-carbon future. When we're thinking globally, acting locally, these meaningful actions contribute to several of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it's a pathway of ensuring a better and sustainable future for everyone. In Climate Action WR, it's a key pillar of a collaborative approach that is necessary to making progress on those sustainable development goals. We co-lead Climate Action WR with Sustainable Waterloo Region in partnership with the region and the area municipalities, including you, so thank you. And this past year, we released our 2020 inventory report. We met a lot of people at community events, and we led some very cool projects that were led by our volunteer sector committees. So this past year was a very high point for home energy evaluations, thanks to the Federal Greener Home Grant Program. In this community, Wilmot residents took advantage of the program and invested over $90,000 in energy efficiency retrofits. We even got a chance to speak at the Morningside Retirement Community, educating over 40 homeowners about the incentive program and encouraging them on their sustainable journeys to taking action and getting a home energy evaluation. Out of that, 2 homeowners actually installed 2 heat pumps. So 2 climate change champions in this area. And then across the entire region, they took advantage and invested over $4 million in energy efficiency retrofit. And that will save 410 tons of carbon emission every year going forward. So, next slide, thank you. So last year we told you about our research in energy poverty and equity in our energy loan program. Well, this past year we got a chance to share our learnings across Canada to different municipalities, and we even got a chance to speak at the Toronto City Hall at a workshop that was led by Clean Air Partnership. I'll pass it over to Patrick now. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So Lisa described us working on some of our climate change mitigation programs. Our Healthy Yards and Neighborhoods program is really about climate adaptation, about becoming more resilient. So we work with 4 municipalities to help residents plant trees in their properties, install rain gardens, and reduce stormwater runoff. That's something that's really important, especially in your more urban areas that have more impervious surfaces, which are greater at flood risk. We're also really pleased to partner with groups like Let's Tree Wilmot, who have a $2 billion tree grant like us, and we collaborate with them a lot. One of the initiatives that we kind of worked on together this year is we ran a Tree of the Year campaign. And one of the trees selected was a great oak in New Hamburg along Peel Street, which I'm sure many of you have passed by. So that was one of the finalists this year. Maybe winner next year, we'll see. Next slide, please. So we're no longer the region's delivery agent for the WET Home Review Program. Last year we wrapped up 5 years of delivering this service. And we visited almost 2,000 homes across the region over that 5-year period. And we help people become more, improve their water conservation, reduce leaks, but we also installed on-the-spot measures which resulted in water savings immediately. So it's really been an honor to be part of this program, and we continue to work with the region on some of their water conservation programs. We have a webinar coming up later this week. And we also actively work with their source water protection, which I know is really important to the residents of Wilmot, to reduce the amount of salt that goes into our drinking water. So, next slide. So we really try and meet people where they're at, engage people, not only homeowners, but also renters. You know, we do in-person workshops, but we also have been doing them online since the pandemic, which is a great way, as our previous presenters mentioned, to increase the accessibility and increase the reach within the region. The Zero Waste Challenge is another way we do that. My jar's over there. I just finished the 14-day challenge. Lisa will hold it up. I'm really proud because this year is the first year I've been able to fit the lid on. But we did a 7-day, 14-day, and some really brave people did a 30-day challenge. But it's not about the competitive aspect of it. It's really just about self-reflection and understanding what we send to landfill every week or every 2 weeks. Next slide. So another of our programs that we don't have direct funding for is the REAP House for Sustainable Living in Kitchener. Now we've started doing open houses every month now, and that's available as a resource to everybody in the region. We had, for Doors Open Waterloo Region, we had over 100 people come through. And last year at this time, we had Prime Minister Trudeau come and visit us as well, who was promoting the Greener Homes program that Lisa mentioned. As I said, we don't have direct funding for this program, so core funding is really critical to make sure that this resource is available to the community. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's happening next, I'm going to bring it back to our climate action programs. Part of our inventory that we released is we realized that in Waterloo Region, 18% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from homes. So we know it's a big opportunity. So we really worked with different partners across the region to understand how we could extend an a loan program, a low-interest loan program that would help people with the upfront costs who might not have that capital to begin with, so that they could install energy-efficient retrofits and pay it back on their utility bills. So from what I understand, this has already been in front of committee at council and has approved initial approval and will be part of the budget process. So, I imagine you'll be seeing that again, Mayor Salonen. Next slide, please. So in this pie chart, you can kind of see the real diversity of revenue sources in our that we really strive for. Contracts encompasses work that we do with municipalities and our local utilities. That's a big piece of the pie. And as well as the fee for service. So that's people pay us for home energy evaluations. And that's driven by incentives for the federal home program, but it's coming directly from homeowners who pay for that service. And you know, the different sizes of the pie vary, but the other sort of big piece of that is the grants that we receive from different levels of government, including that core funding piece, which helps to provide us an even keel on which we can. But really, what I want, the big takeaway is that we really strive for a diversity so that we can be resilient to different changes. And for our last slide, we do want to say thank you very much to all of our core funders. Mayor Salonen, you're part of Regional Council, so the region's a big supporter of REAP. So thank you very much. And we'd also like to thank the people that we get a chance to work with, including Township of Wilmot staff. Ashton Romany has been part of our climate action program, as well as some of the volunteers that I mentioned, like Let's Tree Wilmot, specifically Dean Peachy, and Marlene Kuznevich, who's been one of our seed collectors for our native tree nursery, which is our 2 billion tree grant. So she's been collecting seed that will turn into trees that will hopefully get planted here back in the township. Our executive director, Mary Jane Patterson, wasn't able to be here today because she's spending time with family. But she wanted to pass on her gratitude and her thanks for the support of council over the years. Mary Jane is retiring at the end of this year, so she wanted to pass on her thanks to everyone. So that's the end of our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
Well, I'm again very impressed. You're coming in right at 10 minutes as well. So, thank you very much. I did also just want to point out for everyone that Wilmot is a stakeholder in ANOVA. So as a core funder, we are one of the groups that makes up ANOVA. So thank you very much. Councillors, did you have any questions? Yes, Councillor Cressman.
I believe I made this comment because I know it's not always about, everything isn't about agriculture, but I see this is a focus of many things that we've adopted, cover crops, carbon sinks, a number of things, and I think somehow I'd like to see at least one page in here about what the agriculture community is contributing to reducing their carbon footprint in the region, because I think when you look at order of magnitude, it is significant. And so I think contacting Soil and Crop Association in Guelph would give you some information on that, and I think it would give balance to this report to applaud the efforts of the agriculture community as they attempt to reduce their carbon footprint as well.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I know as part of Climate Action WR, we do track those, but you're right, we could celebrate that more. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, Council? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Martin.
Sorry for being slow through you, Mayor Sallin, and I just wanted to say thanks. It's not really a question. I was thinking, what can I ask? But anyway, thank you for coming. It's a great program. I've used it myself, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I did have one question before you leave. As you do great work throughout all of the community, and you of course know that we're one of the municipalities who signed on to very aggressive, but I think important climate action targets, are there any specific supports that you provide municipalities that you could just share information for the region, or is it more so that you are focused on homeowners and impacting in that way? I'm just curious. So we're all collectively can get to those goals.
Lisa might want to jump in here. I mean, really our work with the municipalities is driven by our Climate Action WR program. There's Wilmot and all the other area municipalities are stakeholders within that. And our sector committees, we do work on agriculture, we work on all the big sources of emissions. You know, residential is sort of an area of expertise for REAP, but Sustainable Waterloo Region, you know, works with our businesses. So it's really sort of a holistic way that we try and address that.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Patrick and Lisa, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Definitely.
Thank you. You're also welcome to stay for the rest of council, but we understand if you have other events to go to tonight. Thank you. Okay, we have no delegations this evening, Council. The consent agenda only has one item, which is 11.1. Does anybody want to remove that to make a comment or question? Okay. In that case, then may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to our reports. So this is item 12.1. I just want to quickly double check my notes here. Okay. Yep. 12.1, and it is for the award of contract RFP for space needs analysis. The recommendation is before you. May I please have a mover to get this on the floor? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu, and I will now call on our Director of Community Services, Chris Catania, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. This report is to seek council approval in the award of RFP 2023-20, Space Needs Analysis and Modernization, in the amount of $111,200. In 2019, the township was in receipt of a fully funded provincial grant supporting small and rural municipalities to modernize and improve the way they provide services to their communities. As part of the 2020 capital budget, council approved a number of initiatives that align with this municipal modernization funding program, which included the 2020 capital project for the administration complex, which included the office layout design and renovations at a cost of, or as a proposed capital for $274,500. The challenge of accommodating existing and anticipated staff requirements has presented the township with an opportunity to increase operational efficiency through enhanced department synergies, optimized accessible layouts, reconfigured existing spaces, and a modernized furniture standard. This proactive approach will ensure that the township remains well-equipped to manage anticipated growth while maintaining a high service level delivery into the foreseeable future. Happy to answer any questions council may have regarding this report.
Thank you very much, Director Catania. And it looks like we have questions from Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't quite 100% sure how it worked out exactly, but the funding referred to in this, we're suggesting that it's coming from a grant that was given in 2019?
Through you, Mayor Sullivan, correct.
Okay.
It's no cost to the tax levy. This is through the province.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, when I looked at this, I thought maybe initially, before I read it, it was going to do with the new property we acquired in New Hamburg. And I'm wondering at what stage is that information way into this study? How did the two mesh? Because at some point in time, we're going to have to do the same thing with that property. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. I'm kind of saying, you know, what's the process as we move forward with that property?
Through you, Mayor Sullivan, to Councillor Cressman, excellent question. There will be a budget request for 2024 as we look at the Neville property. However, for this exercise, we are looking holistically, not just at the administration center here in Baden, but also for the WRC, for the staff that are under that facility, but also some of the staff that will be there will be moving over to the Neville property. So we want to take a holistic approach with this piece. The one coming forward for 2024 in capital will address just some minor renovations that might be coming up.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a quick question. I've just slipped my mind, so I guess it wasn't that important. My mother used to say it was either a lie or it wasn't important, so I'm going to go with not important. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, appreciate Director Catania, your report and the information you've given us. I guess I have two questions. The one is how much of the $111,000 will be on the feasibility and analysis, and how much of it would be regarding drawings? And I guess the second part has to do with, in general, asking about consultancy fees. During the election, I had a number of people ask me about consultants and the cost of consultants and what the township pays in terms of consulting fees. We've gone through the ice pads, and there was a significant amount of money paid in terms of consultancy, but we're not moving forward with a third ice pad in the present moment. Now, just if anybody's listening, I'm not saying we're not moving forward on a third ice pad. I'm just saying that at the present moment, we have no plans to do that. And so it seems like money gets spent. I'm somewhat of a consultant myself. I'm not trying to degrade consultants, and I've earned a fair bit of money over the years. That's a lot, you know, I'm being a consultant of sorts, mental health consultant. But I'm just struggling as we look at our budget and thinking of this $111,000 and then wondering, okay, what does it really mean to seek out consultants? So I'm wondering if you could maybe say something about When do you go for the advice of consultants? How do we determine that? And how do we make decisions with regards to our budget? So those two questions is what.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Martin. Another great question here regarding the RFP, not to get into specifics, but there's obviously a technical piece and a financial breakdown. The financial breakdown encompassed everything from a feasibility study, final report, as well as a future needs report. And that also includes conceptual drawings that you would have based on their findings for existing for this facility. So that's what it would come down to. The second question you have when it comes down to the consultants and why we would look at for this type of work, well, one, it becomes a technical exercise. So for instance, in this type of study here, we're looking, again, when I say holistically, we're taking a look at a facility here that was built 30 years ago. They'll be taking a look at building condition assessments. They'll take a look at return on investment, whether it's advantageous to potentially even renovate the facility. And then when we look at future needs, as an example, when we continue to grow 10 years out or even further, do we need to expand potentially the footprint based on a space needs standard that's been established or industry best standards. So you throw, when you take a look at that, there isn't the technical expertise in-house to do that, and plus the resourcing, so that's why we have to go out in this case, it's really more architectural firms that have it, and they have sub-consultants that deal with mechanical and electrical too when it comes to any type of renovation or potential renovation that would have to happen.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Like the Celine Dion song, it's all coming back to me now. My question to you was, I know that this is all funded by the government grant, which is fantastic. Is there, I know some of them have some kind of expiry dates on them, you use it or you lose it. Is that apply in this case?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Dunstall, it has not expired. I'm trying to think about the term it is. Maybe I'll defer to our manager of finance.
The term that they utilize in the funding program is unconditional, so there's no strings attached.
Well, unconditional until, they decide to change the rules. But any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, thank you very much, Director Catania. In that case, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to our final report of the evening, which is 12.2. Just a reminder for those watching, Councillor Cressman has declared a conflict. He will remain sitting in his seat, but he will not engage in the discussion or the voting. The recommendation is for the Snyder's Road Reconstruction Phase 3. And the recommendation is quite long, so I will leave that to as listed in the agenda. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu, and I will now call on our Director of Infrastructure Services, Jeff Mollenhouse, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. This report seeks approval to assume project control duties from the Region of Waterloo for Snyder's Road Construction Phase 3. This is the third and final phase of the Snyder's Road project. It would encompass construction in 2024 and 2025. And include a portion of Foundry Street as well as Snyder's Road West to Christian Street. This report seeks approval to assume current design relationships with the engineering firms noted and extend them into construction, as well as establish an agreement with the Region of Waterloo on terms of payment and cost recovery of services. Staff are of the opinion that this arrangement is favorable to the township as it gives a frontline role to our staff to oversee critical service construction, particularly for the sanitary sewer construction taking place, as well as it would allow for cost recovery of township effort in that process. This phase includes sanitary sewer and water main reconstruction, as well as the original scope that the region had anticipated with road reconstruction. Most of our services will facilitate growth. The underground services are there working for replacement to facilitate future growth, as well as reduce the inflow and infiltration issues we have in Baden as well. Construction costs for Phase 3 are expected to be in the range of $9.5 million, with $5.5 million being that township costs. The remainder would be recoverable through the region. This is the basis for establishing an agreement with them so that we have proper terms in terms of cash flow and proper payment. So this report outlines additional project costs to complete Phase 3 based on current construction values. In addition, it outlines additional staffing resources that would be needed to accommodate the switch, which comes with cost recovery from capital project planning and invoicing with the region. The recoverable amount listed previously does not include operating cost recovery for staffing, which would be in the order of about $35,000 annually. But both of these will come through a formal request through the budget process, so there certainly will be more discussion with respect to project budget as well as staffing resources that would be needed to support. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, as the Director of Public Works. So just to sort of outline, there's a couple things you've mentioned here that aren't necessarily being voted on this evening. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. The staffing request, which will come as a result of the increased workload that will be associated with this, and you're suggesting that most of that should be recoverable through the region?
Through you, Mayor, I would say at least a third to a half of the costs of an employee would be covered through our recoverable amounts. We do, and certainly we can outlay these through the budget process as well, but we would be asking for that resource to take away some of our consulting services costs that we have to carry on all of our construction projects and utilize that resource for in-house purposes as well.
Through the chair as a follow-up. And then additionally, there's additional monies listed here that will be coming forward 2024, 2025. Those are yet to be approved. Those are to come through a budget request. Just that's correct?
Correct.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes, another
Through the chair,
question.
follow-up. So I'm just curious, say for instance, and thinking hypothetically here, we go through budget, determine that this amount is not necessarily feasible. What kind of contingencies are in place, or what's the backup plan?
Through you, Mayor, just in terms of the infrastructure costs themselves, we could look at breaking out some of the scope of work over a number of years. However, we should expect that would be a greater cost long-term than what we would expect. And I would also note as well the work taking place, 2 points and mentioned before about growth. So infrastructure that we're constructing as part of this phase would facilitate that growth and bring in some of the, we'll say, cash flow that we need from a DC perspective in a timely fashion. And the other part is I&I wise, looking at new infrastructure, and especially in the Baden system. Anywhere we can reduce that I&I, it is a cost to us as the wastewater system. So if we can reduce those costs in terms of I&I costs, then that's the benefit to cost recovery as well. So, but again, we could look at phasing out over, instead of 2 years, we could look at 2 or 3 years. And that could certainly draw out payment, but that again, would be something that have to be balanced off with. We could expect additional costs then for the construction project as well.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I don't mean to keep dominating this. I'm sorry. So I appreciate what you're saying about potentially drawing it out, and you've mentioned that some of this will eventually lead to the future DCs. Is there any way, potentially, and perhaps this isn't a question for you, but potentially for Manager of Finance, can we potentially earmark future DC dollars and utilize those for this? Just curious.
Through you, Mayor, I'll defer to the Manager of Finance.
Through you, Mayor Salonen. Essentially, we would have to follow what's under the DC study right now. So there are, from the past study that was updated in 2021, it did capture some of the costs, particularly with this initiative. We'd have to look forward to our next DC study, which is actually due for renewal next year. So there are definitely components that are incorporated already. I just would have to look towards the next study to incorporate the additional costs if there are any.
Yeah, through the chair, I appreciate that. It's definitely more of a budget-related question for sure, but okay. I believe that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Sadhu.
Through Mayor Salonen to Director Molyneux. Having lived through phase 1 and 2, I know it was chronically delayed. In your capacity, can you comment on some of the challenges they faced? And what is going to be done moving forward for Phase 3? And what has staff learned anything that can be implemented so we don't have the same issues of Phase 1 and 2?
I am just going to quickly jump in and excuse the first part of your question because it doesn't actually pertain to what's before us. Although I appreciate the frustration and the nuances, it doesn't pertain to the motion on the floor, though. That is something that I think offline as well staff can talk about. So you can answer the second part of the question for the going forward in the project before us.
Through you, Mayor, we feel that there's a benefit to, we'll say, having a sort of a local, presence in terms of the construction project. We typically would operate in a support role in these types of, we'll say, region-led projects. And so we become sort of secondary in the process, construction process and involvement of day-to-day activities. That's not to say we're not involved. It's just, it usually has to go through a process and a chain before it can kind of get to our level. Switching in this manner would put us as the project lead, so we would be the first point of contact. And certainly with Snyder's Road being so close to our administrative facility, we feel that can also be a benefit, that if there are construction issues, we're right here and we can deal with them firsthand. I will note that the groundwater conditions that we see in this area as well, from the west side to the east, I think the west is far less as compared to the east, and so we're certainly hopeful that we're not going to encounter the same types of issues that we've seen so far in this general reconstruction.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that you still answered his question. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, seeing none, I will now call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries. I forgot that you had the pecuniary interest. All right, that carries unanimously there. Thank you. On to announcements. I did want to acknowledge this is our last meeting before Remembrance Day. So with Remembrance Day approaching, I do want to take a moment to thank all of those who have served and who are currently serving to protect the rights and freedoms that Canadians enjoy. I also wanted to note that it was a pleasure to have so many people out last week. I think it was the 27th of October for our poppy flag raising, which included all of council was there. We had the color guard from the Legion as well as other members and people in the community. It was a really great way to start off the poppy campaign. And for those watching, if you haven't yet gotten your poppies, you can find them in most local places, including in our township office for a donation. And just remember that to show respect, we wear a poppy, and that we have Remembrance Day services on November 5th in New Dundee, as well as November 11th in New Hamburg. So we look forward to seeing a lot of the community out, as those are both Saturdays this year. Also wanted to give an update on the Taste of the Countryside, which we participated in this year. And it was quite successful, bringing in a total revenue of over $11,940. And there were 6 businesses in Wilmot that had over 363 purchases, which brought in those revenues. Also, the Region of Waterloo budget update. So our region is currently undergoing budget. And we have various ways for you to get involved and provide your feedback and input, including online and in-person engagement. Residents can provide input on the budget plan through an online survey that is open until November the 20th. And you can also come and present at Regional Council or submit written submissions on our key budget dates. And there is an in-person engagement session in November at the Wilmot Community Complex, which is on Saturday, November the 18th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. That is run by regional staff, and that's an opportunity for our Wilmot residents to provide input on the regional budget. I did also want to give an update. 2 weeks ago, we had Local Government Week in Wilmot, where all of the schools with grade 5 classes were invited to join. We were grateful that 3 different schools were able to join us. Students came to the Wilmot Rec Complex. They met with myself, they met Director Catania, as well as CAO Chambers, some of our fire department, our clerk's department, as well as bylaw. And the Zamboni was probably the most exciting part for most kids. But we had a really great time getting to connect with students, as well as we got some input from them on what they'd like to see in the budget. So I think that will be reflected in some of the feedback and information for community engagement. So thank you to all the teachers and parents who brought the students along, and we look forward to celebrating Local Government Week again next year. And my final announcement before I pass it over to council is tomorrow's Halloween. So just a reminder to please drive carefully and watch out for all those little kids in costumes crossing the road, and hope that everybody has a safe and happy Halloween. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, this is just to see if I heard properly or improperly. It's November 4th. I thought you said November 5th. But that could have been my hearing rather than what you said.
That would have been what I have written, but I mean this Saturday.
Yeah, so I believe it's the 4th.
I believe that you are correct in saying that.
Yeah.
It is November the 4th. Thank you very much for that correction. Yes, the New Dundee Remember and Stay service, my apologies, is Saturday, November the 4th. I'm sorry for that, and thank you very much for catching that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. This past Saturday, I had the pleasure of working with some people from Let's Tree Wilmot, and in fact, they were mentioned earlier in our council meeting through REAP. And so I just wanted to thank all of those people, the volunteers, the Let's Tree Wilmot. People can correct my numbers, but I thought that there was $163,000 in federal grant that was given to Let's Tree Wilmot, and in this past year, 2,600 trees planted, something like that. And it's just amazing. For all the people that are out there who have been regularly working at planting trees in Wilmot Township, that's contributing to our environment, and that's wonderful. And so if you go to the corner of Gingrich and Foundry, there's a whole bunch of new trees that were planted on the weekend, so that's exciting. Now at that Let's Tree Wilmot, somebody mentioned to me how pleased they are to be able to watch our council meetings online. And so is it okay to mention staff members without their permission? Because I'm thinking of Carl, and I think it's wonderful that he spends the time that he does, and I know Raj is also helping out, and there they are in the background, behind the scenes, and so this person that I was talking with was very impressed, and many people are watching our meetings online because of our staff members, so I just want to thank them.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. And for those that don't know, Carl and Raj are in our tech department, and they do ensure that you can all see us and watch us either live or on YouTube. So thank you very much, Carl and Raj. And on the Let's Tree Wilmot, I do also want to extend a thanks, and I believe that the planting season is now over. But for those who are interested in getting involved next year, in the spring, their planting season will be starting again. Any other announcements that councillors have or comments that they want? One other one that I will mention, I wasn't able to attend, but I heard great feedback from the New Hamburg Optimists and their pumpkin carving, and now I believe Councillor Dunstall is going to make a comment about it.
Through you, Mayor. Yes. It was a great event on Saturday. Free pumpkins were given out. If you have an opportunity next year, please come out. It was put on by the New Hamburg Optimists and the New Hamburg Fire Department. There were so many pumpkins, and they were decorated. They pick them up, they take them home, they carve them out, they bring them back, and they're lit up by the fire department, and the kids are dressed up in costumes. There was hot chocolate popcorn. It was an amazing event, and the feedback from the community was really, they really appreciate it, especially because it's a free event. So that was great. Thanks for mentioning it, Mayor.
Great. All right, seeing no more announcements, we did not have any business arising from closed. And confirmatory bylaw is as presented in the agenda. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? And that carries. And adjournment, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much and have a great evening.